Greetings everyone, Baldus here. I know many of you guys may be disheartened since the patch notes, but I have some positive news for all of you druids out there, and particularly the Pulverize enjoyers. In this video, I'm bringing you an updated Pulverize build for Season 1 that takes advantage of a couple of new aspects and interactions. The key components of the build consist of Natural Balance aspect, Inner Beast legendary node, and the Shapeshifter glyph. With these combined, we are able to critically strike often and hit very hard at a suitable range. By taking Wind Shear and weaving Pulverize with the Shockwave aspect, we are able to mitigate a lot of damage taken by staying almost permanently at a distance from the enemy. This is particularly important as we have seen huge survivability nerfs due to DR reductions and unstoppable uptime. Now there is two variations of this build, one that requires no uniques and can be used from tier 3 onwards, and then another that can be optimized with the use of Tempest Raw. For this build I will provide both an endgame level 100 version and a leveling version from tier 3 onwards. I'll be back with the gear, skill tree and Paragon Board after the remainder of the gameplay clips. Welcome back everyone. So to begin, I'm just going to go over the key aspects and uniques for the build. I'm not going to go over all the stat priorities here. I'm going to leave that for the build planner, which will be in the description. So just make sure you check that out for all those stat priorities later on. So for the helmet aspect, we're going to take Mending Stone. This increases the duration of Earthen Bulwark by 6 seconds, and then also replenishes the barrier when we kill an enemy with an Earth skill. So because Pulverize will be an Earth skill, we're gaining barrier when we kill with Pulverize. Since we got the survivability nerfs after the patch, it's important that we gain damage reduction from other sources, so in this case we're just amplifying the barrier. For the armor, the best in slot chest here is Insatiable Fury. This provides a really nice damage stats and then also damage reduction and armor in werebear form. We also gain +3 ranks to all werebear skills, and in fact this is actually +4 ranks now, as I think when they were updating the tooltip they just added 1 more rank by mistake. So if we have a look here, we have 13 ranks. We take off the chest armor, we have 9 out of 5 ranks. So it is in fact +4 ranks. It is likely that it will be changed, but who really knows? We'll take the damage increase for now. For the gloves, we're going to take the aspect of the Ursine Horror. This makes Pulverize an Earth skill, which is essential for the build, and then also releases Tectonic Spikes, dealing a little bit of damage over time. For the pants, we're going to take aspect of Might. This makes our basic skills grant 20% damage reduction for up to 6 seconds. So since the nerf to Disobedience, I would say aspect of the Might is now better for this kind of build, because we're constantly weaving our auto attack in between our pulverizes, so we should always have this damage reduction buff up, which is more consistent than Disobedience, especially since the nerf. For the boots, we're going to take the aspect of Quicksand. This provides our Earth skills with slow enemies, so we can provide a crowd control effect onto enemies, which means we benefit from the damage bonuses to crowd control. For the weapon, you want to put the shockwave aspect on here. This creates a shockwave from Pulverize that deals up to 200% damage, and it's basically what makes it a ranged skill, so we can use it while being safe and not taking as much damage. Just to note, you can also use an axe or a staff here. Both are pretty decent and apply good damage bonuses from the implicit. I would say two-handed maces just aren't cutting it right now, because overpowered damage really does nothing, sadly. So maces are definitely not the choice to go for. For the amulet, you want to take Natural Balance. This is essential, and it's important that it's on the amulet for the maximum bonus. With this, we gain 67.5% multiplicative crit strike damage after we cast a Storm skill. So because we're always weaving Wind Shear or Storm Strike that are both Storm skills, we gain the crit damage buff from here. Additionally, when we cast an Earth skill, we also gain crit strike chance to our Storm skills. The second part is very important when we use Tempest Roar with this build, because Storm skills are also now Werewolf skills. We can gain the poison application through the skill tree, so we can get the damage buff from Envenom much easier with the crit strikes. I'll talk about that more when we go through the skill tree. For the first ring, we're going to take the accelerating aspect. Critical strikes with core skills increase our attack speed. This just makes the build feel a lot smoother, as we're able to increase the attack speed of Wind Shear and then also Pulverize, just so we limit the time basically between the weaving. The second ring, we're going to take the Crash Stone aspect. This makes our Earth skills deal 40% more critical strike damage to crowd controlled enemies. So because we're applying our slow from our boots, we gain the crit strike damage once that slow is applied. You could also use Retaliation with this build, just instead of this. It's still 40% damage with the max roll. The only reason why I've got Crash Stone here is because when I was doing my dungeons, I found that you don't often have always your max fortify, especially when you're doing higher dungeons. The consistency with the damage increase isn't always there compared to the Crash Stone aspect. The only limitation of this is that it doesn't apply on bosses unless you have it staggered. So that's it with the gear. Now we'll move on to the spirit boons. So for the first row, we're just going to take wariness for the reduction from elites. For the second row, we're gonna take this as our 2 passives, and we're gonna take crit strike chance and avian wrath for the crit strike damage. You can also go for attack speed, increasing the flow of the build. For the third row, we're gonna take pack leader. This refreshes our poison creeper when we deal critical strikes on a lucky hit. So it just means we can spam this more often if necessary. You may have noticed from the clips, because we're sitting at ranged quite a lot of the time, we don't actually use Poison Creeper all the time, so it's not always important. You could go for something like Bolster if you want to keep your Fortify up a bit more. For the final row, we're still going to take Masochistic, because we still need that healing from Pulverize. However, it's been heavily nerfed. The consistency is much worse with our healing. We still need lucky hit on gear, on the gloves and the rings, just so we can get as much healing as possible through our crit strikes. Just a quick note on spirit boons: if you go the Tempest Raw version with Bestial Rampage key passive instead, you get rid of Poison Creeper and you would just pick up Bolster instead. So for the skill tree, I'll go over that quickly, and also to the Bestial Rampage route. So for general going through dungeons, you want to use Wind Shear for the ranged ability. You can easily switch this whenever you go to a boss room in order to use Storm Strike, which works better on bosses because it has a higher chance to apply vulnerability. So you can just switch that whenever you want. For the next passive, we're just gonna take one into here for the max spirit, so we can lock 3 ranks of wild impulses. That just increases our damage. We've took 1 point into here just to increase a bit of spirit generation. Of course, we take as many ranks into Pulverize as possible. And then we take Primal Pulverize in order to reduce the damage dealt by monsters. We also take crit strike chance against close enemies, mainly for bosses or just elites whenever we're close. And then we also take the damage reduction while in werebear form. It's very important now to get as much DR as possible, as we've been nerfed in other areas. For Earthen Bulwark, we take the Unstoppable and also Innate Earthen Bulwark. The damage here has still not been fixed, so it does scale massively with Nightmare dungeons. You may have seen like some clips with 14 million hits and stuff with this. It's just crazy how it hasn't been hit, but hasn't been nerfed, but we'll take it anyway for now. Down here, we just take 1 point into Poison Creeper, so we can put it on our bar, use the active and also the passive. Then we take 3 points into Clarity. Because we're weaving Wind Shear or Storm Strike, we transform into human form. So we gain 6 spirit every time we do this, which is very nice for this build. Over here, we take all the ranks into the Earth skill passives. And then we take 1 rank into here, so we can get the Envenom damage buff against poison enemies. Over here, we just take 1 point into Petrify. We mainly use Petrify against bosses and also groups of elite mobs, just to stun them and kill them quicker. We take passives here, including Circle of Life. I really just wanted to take this passive now because we're lacking healing in other areas, so just to maximize our healing, I found that Circle of Life is quite important now. We definitely want to take Resonance because we're weaving Storm and Earth skills, so we gain triple the bonus, so we gain 18x damage multiplier here. Also take Natural Disaster for more damage against vulnerable enemies. We take 3 ranks into Quick Shift for 15x damage when we shapeshift, and then a bit of DR reduction against elites after shapeshifting into Werewolf or Werebear. Then we take Ursine Strength for this version of the build. I'll quickly just take the Bestial Rampage points, just so you know what to do. So if you have Tempest Roar and you want to go Bestial Rampage, you just change this. You remove 1 point of... No, you remove all the clarity points because you're no longer going into Human and also Poison Creeper. You put 1 point into Toxic Claws, so you apply Poison with Werewolf skills, which are now your Storm skills because of Tempest Roar. And then you pick up Blood Howl and the 20 Spirit generation. And that is it. That is all you've got to do whenever you get Tempest Roar, and then you're quickly into the Bestial Rampage version, where you gain bonus attack speed, and you still gain the increased damage in Werebear. The only thing you lose from Ursine Strength is the maximum life, the 20% maximum life, which is a significant hit to survivability. So, but you can do whatever you want. The Bestial Rampage version feels a bit quicker. It's a bit nicer just for farming dungeons, running through content like Helltides, etc. So, whatever you want to play. The good thing to note is that the Paragon Board does not change at all, depending if you want to do Bestial Rampage or Ursine Strength, so you don't need to switch out this in any way. For the Paragon Board, I'll just quickly go over the main glyphs and legendary nodes, and then you can have a look at that in the description your own time. So for the first board, we're going to put the shape-shifting aspect into here. This increases our rare nodes, so we gain a bit more damage, a bit more resistance here, even though that's not that important. But the damage is nice. But the main bonus is shapeshifting has a 20% chance to cause the skill's damage to critically strike. Whenever we shapeshift into Werebear to human form or werewolf form, we have a 20% chance to cause the next skill to critically strike. This is quite nice, important. It's very important, so we have a 1 out of 5 chance to just automatically crit with this glyph. For the first board, we're going to take Inner Beast. Now, just a note, if you want to take this for leveling, you know, after T3, this is kind of the most important node to get before this build really comes online. So probably around level 60, you may have enough points to get here. Maybe 60 plus, a bit, somewhere around there. You'll be able to pick up Inner Beast. And that's where the build starts to feel a bit smoother to play. For the glyph in the first board, we're going to take Earth and Sky. This increases our nature magic skill against crowd control or vulnerable enemies, so just a nice damage buff. But we're also gaining some really nice magic node buffs here to shapeshifting skill damage and armor. The armor is particularly nice considering the survivability nerfs. So to begin, you would want to come over here and you want to take the Thunderstruck board. And the main reason for this is just so we can gain this glyph slot very quickly, where we take Territorial. So we gain a bit more damage against close targets here, and also the DR reduction against close enemies. If you want, you can also switch Spirit into here instead for more damage, and also the additional bonus damage increase. So depending on if you want survivability or damage, you can choose either Territorial or Spirit. So the main reason why we take this board is so we amplify our crit strike damage from these two nodes here. For the next board, we'll lock in Earthen Devastation, and we take the glyph Fang and Claw. This is another bonus to magic nodes, so we gain our crit strike with earth skills here, and then also we gain damage against close enemies while in werewolf or werebear form. Additionally, with the Earthen Devastation node, we also gain 30x increased damage to enemies afflicted by crowd controls. So whether you used Poison Creeper and you've immobilized the enemy, or you've applied the slow from the Quicksand passive, we should always have this nice damage increase. For the next board, we then lock in Survival Instincts, where we gain some nice execute damage, and then we take Exploit in this glyph slot. The reason why we take this exploit here is because we can benefit the most from the dex. Now that we've got vulnerable nerfs in our stats, it's very important that we gain as much vulnerable damage from other sources. The damage from the glyph is much more important now as we're getting less from other sources. So you want to try and get as much dexterity as possible here. I'm missing one dex here, so I could have a bit more vulnerable damage. Just so you know, even though it has been nerfed on the stats, it still is a multiplicative damage increase. So it's still massive for anyone's damage. So the reason why we have this board attached is so we can get this rare node quickly, and then we also gain the increased vulnerable damage and some crit damage. This is a really big node. It might not seem much just taking this board for just these nodes, but the crit strike damage and vulnerable damage is very important. Finally, for the last board, we just put Ancestral Guidance in, so we gain 30x increased damage after we spend 75 spirit. So just to note, this board layout is specified for like a level 100 build or a high level build where you can get most of the nodes. When you're leveling, it might be more beneficial to say bring Ancestral Guidance down to this board here, so you can get that very easily when you're leveling, and then maybe if you want to switch Survival Instincts over to this one so you can get that before. Like it's all up to you guys, like what you want to do when you're leveling, but this board will always remain the same, as it's very important you get Inner Beast. That's pretty much it for the build showcase. I mean, obviously we've been heavily nerfed across the board in general. I mean, just like most classes have. So these builds aren't going to feel as good as they used to, especially before the Malignant Heart stuff. I'd just like to note that the Malignant Heart that I would take is Tempting Fate, which increases your critical strike damage by 40 to 60%, but it reduces your non-crit strikes. The non-crit strikes part is irrelevant as they already don't do any damage anyway, so we're literally putting all our damage into crit damage, so it's just a nice buff. There is a few other hearts that I've seen, but we'll have to wait and see how they actually work in practice before. But yeah, overall this build should feel pretty good, and it doesn't really require any uniques. I mean, Insatiable Fury is obviously nice, but it's not essential. So you can have a legendary aspect if you've just got into T3. You can get this build up and running straight away if you've got all the aspects for it. And then you can start pumping pretty nicely. Because it does significantly more damage than just regular Grizzly Rage Pulverize. And it has no issues with resource generation. And because of the unstoppable nerfs with Grizzly Rage, there isn't really any benefit before going Grizzly Rage. So we definitely want to go the natural balance route if you want to play a Pulverize build. Thanks again for watching. Make sure to check me out on Twitch at Baldus Maximus, sorry. And I'll be streaming the whole of Season 1 hard. So hopefully you guys can check that out and enjoy the game with me. Thanks to everyone for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.